Hey, Four Seasons. Today, I want to talk a little bit about humility. Now, as you know, there is a whole lot going on right now. There is, of course, the coronavirus is still a thing. We're soon going to be moving into yellow and then hopefully green, and we're trying to kind of figure out what it looks like to wisely roll back some of these restrictions. At the same time, we recently um, became aware of the horrific murder of George Floyd, and of course, weeks before that, Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and there just have been a number of recent high-profile um, murders that we've seen of black men and women um, being killed. And that's led, of course, this past weekend where we have protests, the vast majority of which are peaceful, right? Maybe loud, maybe demonstrative, but not violent. But there are these small, really small groups of people who have taken advantage of these times and then, of course, done things like light businesses on fire or even attack people. But again, small numbers. But it's what we see, right? We see all of this stuff. We're inundated with it, whether it's via our news channel, whatever we watch, whatever cable news program we watch, or whether it's social media. Maybe you're on Facebook or Instagram. Probably Facebook. Instagram isn't quite as focused on the negative things. But whatever, we're getting hit from this all over the place, and it's really easy for us to quickly form opinions. Well, partly because it feels really unsafe to not have an opinion on something. If we have an opinion on something, it almost feels like we control it, right? Like we feel like we know what's true. It gives us a sense of certainty and control, which is much more comforting than not knowing. But I would just want to encourage you, particularly if you, like me, are a white man, for whom the experiences of these black men and women feels pretty foreign. Or if you, like me, are not a virologist or an epidemiologist, someone who specifies in pandemics. If you're neither one of those, we need to enter into this period with a great deal of humility. It really is important. And it's not just important because these things are so complicated, though of course they are, but it's important because for those of us who are followers of Jesus, humility is a key character trait of Jesus himself and, of course, of his followers. We read in Philippians chapter 2, there's this kind of great hymn that the Apostle Paul writes in his letter to the Philippians, where he says, Jesus, being in very nature God, didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking on the very nature of a servant, took on human likeness. And so it's kind of this downward movement of God reincarnates. He comes to be present with us as one of us. But it's this move of humility. And Jesus, of course, embodies this on the cross. That's the kind of the ultimate picture of God's lowering of God's self in humility, is being willing to take on death. And then as we learn what it means to follow Jesus, humility is a key part of what that looks like. Listen to Peter as Peter writes his letter, one of the closest of Jesus' disciples. He writes his letter, 1 Peter chapter 5. He says this to an early group of Christians. And all of you, dress yourselves in humility as you relate to one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So humble yourselves under the mighty power of God, and at the right time he will lift you up in honor. Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. So we give our cares to God, and we humble ourselves as we relate to one another. We clothe ourselves in humility as we relate to one another. St. Augustine, one of the early church fathers, great theologian of the faith, says this. He says, the way of Christ is first through humility, second through humility, third through humility. If humility does not precede and accompany and follow every good work we do, if it is not before us to focus on, if it is not beside us to lean upon, if it is not behind us to fence us in, pride will wrench from our hand any good deed we do at the very moment we do it. humility is key. And so may we, as we look to follow Jesus in these turbulent times, lead with humility. May we be, as we talked about a couple of videos ago, may we be quick to listen and slow to speak. Not because you don't know anything, but because you don't know everything. Because you and I don't know everything, we need to learn to listen, to learn from those, particularly from those who are suffering, so that we might have a better idea of what it means to actually love our neighbors. Not love them as we wish they were, but love them as they actually are. Love them in the midst of the experiences they are actually having, not the experiences we imagine that they're having. So may you and I be quick to listen and slow to speak. May we clothe ourselves in humility and cast our cares upon the one who cares for us. And as we do, may we see all people of every ethnicity and culture flourish together as we deal with the very complex issues that face us now. May we learn what it means to live together in love, the love that casts out all fear. Grace and peace, friends.